I always enjoyed and had fun on Halloween, but it wasn't always the case. In fact, sometimes Halloween was pretty scary, and it wasn't the monsters and ghosts that were the stuff of nightmares either. Here are some stories that explain why. First, the costume contest. When I was 7 or 8, my mom decided that for Halloween I was going to be a witch. She bought a witch's mask, made a pointy hat, even a black gown. I said I didn't want to be a witch. Don't make me wear all that stuff. I'm a boy, and witches are girls. It didn't matter. My mom went ahead with her plans of making me a witch. My dad wouldn't save me. I guess he thought it was funny. Our small town had one movie theater, and for Halloween they played free cartoons for all the kids. They gave away bags of treats, some candy, mostly peanuts. Who cares if you had a peanut allergy? And they had a best costume contest. On the day of the free theater show, my mom dressed me up as a witch, drove me to town, pointed me in the direction of the theater, and told me, "Get in there." Well, at least I had a mask on and nobody'd know who I am. At the door, they had some people picking out the best costumes. To my horror, I was picked out as one of them. I couldn't believe it. Did my mom hate me? What did I do to deserve this hell? During the cartoons, I couldn't eat my candy. You have to lift up your mask to be able to eat, and I didn't want anybody to see that I'm a boy in a witch's costume. After the cartoons, they had all the kids picked out as having the best costumes come up on stage. Then the theater owner held his hand over each one of us, and whoever got the most claps and cheers was the winner. He started down the line until he got to me and held his hand out over my head. There were a bunch of people clapping. I'm thinking, oh my God, no. If I win, I have to take off my mask. And worse than that, you have to tell everyone who you are. I knew if I win, I'd die on the spot. It would be fitting since we were celebrating Halloween. To my relief, one other kid got more claps than I did. Thank you, mighty creator of the universe, thank you. I never ever dressed like a witch again and told my mother, if she makes me dress like a witch again, I'm putting a spell on her. Next, water balloons on Halloween. When I was a tween, for Halloween, I met my cousins Kyle and Carson in town. As far as my folks knew, we were going trick-or-treating, but we had other plans. We bought a bag of balloons and went to one of the local grocery stores. It had restrooms in the basement. There, we proceeded to fill our balloons with water. When our trick-or-treats buckets were filled with water balloons, we went out to throw them around. That night it was cold. I mean, really cold. After all, this was in North Dakota. Cold enough so if you threw a water balloon on the side of a building, it burst and almost immediately froze into a slab of ice on the side of the building. We threw them on the sides of businesses up and down Main Street. But what was really fun was throwing them on the sides of houses. The people inside would hear something hit the side of their house and came running out to see what's going on. We hid and watched as the people came out, not seeing anyone, and then noticing a slab of ice on the side of their house with the most shocked look. We ran out of water balloons, but still had a bunch of balloons ready to fill up with water. We went back to the grocery store, but the owner saw us and said, "There you are. You are the guys that made a big mess of my restroom." We did? Then I remembered how some of the balloons burst open while we were filling them. Some sprayed water while we were trying to tie them up. Maybe we did make a mess. The owner handed us a mop and said, "Clean it up and then get out." Since we were such good boys, we cleaned the restrooms. Now, trick-or-treating in base housing. In my younger days, I joined the Air Force. At the base that I was assigned, we lived in base housing. Halloween was an amazing time while we were in base housing. Not only did the neighbor kids come trick-or-treating, but Air Force parents living off base thought it's safer to have their kids trick-or-treating in the base housing areas. The people there wouldn't put bad things in the candy like some weird people off base might do. So we would get hundreds of trick-or-treaters every year. We always bought a ton of candy to be ready. Sometimes we ran out of candy and started handing out spare change. When the change was all, we turned off all the lights and hid in the bedroom so nobody would see us through the windows. That didn't always work either. The doorbell would still ring. Halloween was one of my favorite holidays. I loved dressing up, not as a witch, no way, but my favorite classic movie monster, Dracula. I made myself some fangs, used an old raincoat as a cape, wore black, slicked my hair back. I had hair then. And of course, didn't wear glasses. Dracula doesn't wear glasses, don't you know? I made up a dead body with some old coveralls, set the body by the front door, sitting up against the wall, and had some scary music playing. When the doorbell rang, I hid behind the door and came swooping out. It was great fun to scare the older kids. They'd jump back with a surprised look on their face. Some would come up the sidewalk slowly, real carefully, looking at the body, leaning against the wall, and ask if he's real. I always answered, sure. There were usually a couple of older teenagers I couldn't scare. I'd jump out from behind the door, stand in the doorway doing my best Dracula. Blah, blah. They look bored, say trick or treat, man, and hold out their pillowcase they're using as a trick or treat bag. I would ask, where's your costume? They'd open up their jacket and show me their blue oyster cult t-shirt that they had on and say, don't fear the Reaper, dude. Okay, so I'd put candy in their pillowcase. I didn't swoop out on the littler kids. Even so, they would stare at me with wide eyes instead of looking to see what candy I'm putting in their bucket or bag. Sometimes their parents would be with, stand back and tell their little ones to go on, go to the door, don't be scared, he won't hurt you. Like they were scared to come to the door with their kid. Be sure to like and subscribe, otherwise the monsters are going to come and get you. The mini haunted house. At another base that we were assigned, some of our friends planned a Halloween party for their kids. They heard that I liked to dress up like Dracula. They got the idea that we could have a mini haunted house. For the party, they had me upstairs in one of the rooms laying down like I'm dead in my vampire's coffin. They had all the kids come up the stairs telling them they really need to see what's up there. When they came in the room, I got up slowly, turning toward them, and did my best Dracula screech with my hands up like claws. They ran out screaming, almost falling down the stairs. It was really fun. I enjoyed it. The parents enjoyed it. The kids, not so much. The brownie troop at the haunted house. A few years later, our daughter was in Girl Scouts. She was in a brownie troop. The troop decided they would like to go to one of the haunted houses for Halloween. My wife volunteered to be one of the chaperones for the haunted house trip. Then she found out that she had to work that night, so she asked me to take her place. I thought, sure, why not? It could be fun. I met the troop and the other lady that volunteered at the haunted house. Outside, while the parents dropped off their girls, the lady said, the girls will go in a single file line. She will take the rear, and I should be in the front. Okay, no problem. Looking back, it wasn't the lady's first rodeo, and she had a devious plan. The haunted house had different sections, each with its own monster or killer in a little scenario. The sections got more intense and scarier as we went along, and there were doors separating each one. We would go in one, they did their little scary story, the girls would scream, and when the story was done, I opened up the next door, and we would move along to the next section. As we went along, the sections got too much for the girls. They'd scream and start pushing to go on to the next section before we were ready to move on. I tried to hold them back until the story was done. But do you know how strong 15 little girls can be? I had both arms and legs in the doorway and was being crushed by the onslaught of 15 adrenaline-infused little monstrous girls. The lady in the back line was yelling at me not to let the girls through yet, but they overpowered me. Superman and the Incredible Hulk together couldn't hold them back. We finally made it to the end and back outside. The girls were all crying by then. The lady was yelling at me for letting the girls through before I was supposed to. Parents came to pick up their girls, saw them crying, and gave me a blaming look for scaring them too much. At that point, I knew I should have stayed home and dressed up like Dracula instead. Frankenstein's Castle, or rather Frankenstein's Castle, the German pronunciation. Jump ahead a few years. We were stationed in Germany when we heard about Frankenstein's Castle and it was going to be open for Halloween. Now, how could we miss that? When we drove up to the castle, and by the way, it is a real historic castle, we saw the parking lot was filled. The castle was all lit up. You could hear music playing and bass hitting your chest. We went inside. Most people were in costume. There were monsters, clowns, and everything in between. Also, a lot of people were not in costume, at least by 1980s standards. Being dressed like Americans was our costumes. It was really crowded. People everywhere in all levels of the castle. Hardly any room to walk or even move. There actually was a Frankenstein's monster. When he came walking, towering above everyone, the people got out of the way and made a path for him. There was supposed to be a secret Frankenstein's laboratory, but with the crowd making it hard to find anything, we missed it. It really must have been a secret. I lost my wife for a while. Later, after about a half hour, I found her. Then we couldn't find our way out for almost a half hour. Eventually we did. Otherwise, I guess I wouldn't be here to tell the story. We'd still be there. Was it a scary Halloween? You bet. The castle had the scariest things ever. People. Yep, Halloween. I love my favorite holiday. Be sure to like and subscribe. There's more that Dennis doesn't know.